But as much as we like to make fun of little Ben, we have to remember that in light of CPAC happening this weekend, this is somebody who, as much as anyone in media, still has platforms, pretty big. This is a person who is not only pushing for war with Iran, he's celebrating it, even as our service members die for his Israel cause.
Is the thing. If you look historically, the American people actually have some patience. Our shortest wars were longer than the current conflict. The Persian Gulf War involved 43 days of active operations. The Kosovo NATO air war lasted for 78 days. Even deposing Noriega in Panama in the late 80s, that lasted for 6 weeks. And also, Americans are not dumb. We don't believe that if you're involved in military activity, you're not going to lose anybody. Because, again, if necessary military activity can only be pursued at zero cost, there's no use in having a military. Literally, the point of it.
Did you hear that? Did you hear what he said? I'm going to play it again. Listen carefully.
I don't believe that if you're involved in military activity, you're not going to lose anybody. Because, again, if necessary military activity can only be pursued at zero cost, there's no use in having a military.
This is a roundabout way of him saying, my life is more important than yours. What is the point of having a military if we can't send soldiers in to fight and die so that I can feel safe, so that Israel can reign supreme? Yeah, he needed a weed whacker, that's for sure. This is a pretty pathetic human being. Probably lives inside a fortress of sorts. Now, even though he thinks of himself as a linguist of sorts, he's not. He's not very subtle in how he tries to give backhanded comments towards the plebs, if you will. He truly sees us as lesser than. Now, even though the Zio-Nazis say what they say, this is a person who was paid a lot of money to continue pushing this narrative. And I don't want to hear shit from anyone in the audience says enough of little Ben. And I'll tell you why very clearly. Because whether you like it or not, people like this fuck and his female equivalent, Laura Loomer, they have the ear of the President of the United States. Now, do they have it because that's who Miriam Adelson and Bill Ackman and the rest of them tell them is who they're supposed to be listening to? It's very possible. I'm not going to say that that's not the reason, but they're still listening. And he's still listening to them and thinking that this is good. We should just go along with this. This makes total sense. He is a chicken in more ways than one.
Literally, the point of a military is to do hard and dangerous things. That's why our military members are heroes. That's because they're willing to undertake that sacrifice for a greater good. Now, Iran, for its part, seems to be counting on this view of Americans that have been shared by pretty much all of our enemies at one time or another, that were weaklings, that were incapable of mobilizing for victory. Hitler famously thought that America was decadent and unstable. In one private conversation, according to sort of Hitler's notes, reportedly he said, quote, "I don't see much future for the Americans. It's a decayed country. They have the racial problem, the problem of social inequalities. Everything about the behavior of American society reveals that it's half Judaized and the other half nigrified." And this is Hitler talking. How can one expect a state like that to hold together? And during Vietnam, the Viet Cong counted on the idea that Americans would get tired, that Americans would get bored. And after a while, they were right. Americans did get tired. After a while, they were right. Americans did want out. We should know that there were 50,000 American dead by that point. In Iraq and Afghanistan, too, our enemies thought, okay, they can just outlast the Americans. But here is the point. To outlast Americans, typically, requires not months, not weeks, years.
Okay. He doesn't even try to hide it. He just said, and it was almost 60,000 Americans that were killed in Southeast Asia. They got tired. They got bored of it. Yeah, they were there for many years. So now what you're suggesting is that we are going to need to be there for many years, little Ben? Is that what you're suggesting? The president of the United States is trying to find at least I think he is. Lord fucking knows it's only because the stock market's totally doing really bad right now and the American people are getting restless. If that's the reason for him to end the war, I don't give a fuck. Just end it. But you are like, no, this could take years. It could totally take years. And I want it to be however long it has to be in order for us to have our Greater Israel Project and the end of Iran. That is what you want, isn't it, little Ben? That is what you're fighting for. It's pretty clear as far as I can see.
But here is the point. To outlast Americans typically requires not months, not weeks, years. The reality is that there is no way to extricate ourselves from this situation right now. There's no way to extricate ourselves from this situation by simply running away. That does not leave Iran in control of the Strait of Hormuz, which means $100 to $150 barrels of oil from here to forever.
On April 20th, smoke them if you got them, the United States military is raising the eligibility age from 34 to 42. Ben Shapiro just turned 42 years old. He'll be old enough. He'll be eligible. Very eligible. Why don't you join? I'm 42 for a little while. I've always wanted to serve my country, not for the reasons of the State Department. But things change. And I sure as hell am not serving for his ass. But he's not going to enlist because we're just a bunch of plebs. And he sits in district. What district is it, Jen? The capital? Oh, yeah, we're in District 12 and he's in the capital. So he doesn't have to. I would send little Ben before I would send Barron. At least Barron doesn't obnoxiously go out there and try to cause trouble. At least not that I've seen. I know one of his grandchildren does, but Ben should serve. And I don't care how weak he is. I'll just throw him in there.
That is a point that was made by Larry Fink over at BlackRock. Not a Fink fan, but he's right about this.
If there's a cessation of war, and yet Iran remains a threat to trade, a threat to the Straits of Hormuz, then I would argue that we could have years of, above $100, closer to $150 oil.
Without getting into stereotypes, yes, Larry Fink is a Zionist Jew. He is in charge of the most powerful private equity firm in the world. No one is benefiting more financially the world over from conflict than his organization. Whether it's Ukraine, whether it's Southeast Asia, whether it is the West Asia, Middle East, doesn't matter. BlackRock. And that's who little Ben is referencing. Little Ben referencing BlackRock. We should listen to Larry Fink and BlackRock. That's who we should be taking advice from. It's almost mind-numbing to think that there are people that listen to him that think that this guy's worth any salt. And the only reason why he's getting any type of traction, once again, is because our country, our government, has been conscripted to the state of Israel because the Zionist billionaire class has fully taken over our government for now.
Happens to the global economy if that happens? How do we see
We'll have global recession.
Oh,
Okay, again, he's right about this. That's the point, is that it's not as though if things ended today, things would be better a month or 2 months or 4 months from now with Iran still in control of the Strait of Hormuz. There is no way out but through. And here's the thing. Once we get to the end of this, if the Iranian regime falls, energy will become cheap again because the Strait of Hormuz will be free again. Not only that, you'll actually have American energy companies working with a friendly Iranian government to radically increase oil production. And because markets are forward-looking, the price of energy will then go down.
So I have a really great idea. You know what we're going to do? We're going to take over Karg Island. We are going to invade, and then we'll open up the Strait of Hormuz, and the prices will go down, and everything will be just great. 5,000 Marines are going to have to die, but the price of oil will go down. Now, if you thought he's bad, we like to call Josh Hammer the Timu version of Lil Ben. And he spoke at CPAC yesterday. What a doozy of commentary. Because again, they don't know what to do now. They don't know what to say because they're losing the plot. The plot's being lost. The all-seeing eyebrow. That's a winner. You should star that one. Here's what Turning Point USA extraordinaire Josh Hammer had to say.
But some others are absolutely terrible, and a few of them are speaking at this conference, too. Matt Gates, there's your shout-out. These black-billing doomsayers are engaged in a conscientious brain rot op to make the right retarded. The slogan that catapulted Donald Trump to the presidency and continues to define his political career is "Make America Great Again." It's a pithy and inspiring call to action. In it are three distinct claims. First, America was once great. Second, America became less than great. And third, it will one day be made great again. The retard right denizens of Podcastistan reject the fundamental essence, however, of MAGA. Much like the neo-Marxist left, the retard right doesn't think America was ever great. And they certainly don't think that America is capable of being made great once again. They are therefore explicitly anti-MAGA. In fact, they are actually just anti-American.
No, they're actually just done with your cause. You know, the thing that I find so interesting about Timu Ben is that it doesn't sound like the crowd really gives a damn. And this is CPAC, where you would think that he was as close to home base as you could possibly get. And no one really seems to care. But again, the organization that once carried the torch for the conservative youth is dying, and it will be dead eventually, sooner rather than later. The retard right. So it's not the woke right anymore. Now it's the retard right. That's the best you could come up with? I don't want to call you the R word, but let me tell you something, guy. Everything about you screams, I don't know, Rain Man, whatever it is. You just copy to a T every single nuanced movement of Lil Ben. The way you talk, the way you stand, the way you project. There is nothing genuine or real about you at all. In fact, when you talk about alternative lifestyle, you probably fancy Ben the way that Lindsey Graham fancied John McCain. Why else would you copy him to that extent? I'm sure Ben loves it because he's a total egomaniac. But you? It ain't Hammer time, that's for sure.
We know this because they openly say it. Tucker Carlson, who wrestled the demon and seems to have lost the fight with the demon, recently hosted on his show a Chinese Communist Party mouthpiece by the name of Jiang Shuiqi. On podcast, Jiang proposed a new world order in which the United States joins China, Russia, and Iran as quote-unquote equal partners. If you think that sounds patently insane, that's because it is. If you think that sounds indistinguishable from the musings of Noam Chomsky, that's because it is. But that didn't stop Carlson from affirming Jiang's Beijing-approved dystopia as the wisest possible advice and the only path that preserves civilization. Of course, Carlson has also lauded Russia, Maduro's Venezuela, and even Sharia law.
They just think of the same talking point, or they just espouse the same talking point every time. And who at this point is going to CPAC? When you have Catholics for Catholics, that was the real Catholic event in DC just a week ago. That's where Candace was. That's where Carrie Jean Baller was. That's where Joe Kent was. That's where General Flynn was. Again, the people who treat Catholicism seriously are there. They're not at this. This is a political rally for the small-minded cult-like figures that still believe we're making America great again. No, we're not. We have to get out of the matrix, if you will. No Andrew Tate reference intended. But this is where it's headed. And as I said, the good news is there's nothing inspirational about what he's saying. In fact, it's downright pathetic what he's saying. It's being met with deaf ears. No one is making a peep in that audience, which should tell you all you need to know. May it die. Yes, very good. CPAC is Israel Conservative PAC. That's basically what it's become. Much like Turning Point USA got bought out by them, hell, all the more reason to.
You'd be hard-pressed to find a single anti-American system or regime that Carlson has not, in fact, praised. By the same token, Megyn Kelly, whose insatiable appetite for clicks has overwhelmed whatever decent principles she purports to hold, had a curious guest for her first episode after the commencement of Operation Epic Fury against Iran. That was Marjorie Taylor Greene. In December, just prior to resigning in disgrace after Trump kicked her out of MAGA, Greene met with the radically anti-American Chinese Communist Party-funded group Code Pink. Instead of celebrating the world...
Could we just once and for all get this out of the way? I don't know why Code Pink does not sue these people for slander. They constantly insinuate that they are a CCP-funded organization. It is an outright lie. It is a repeated lie. And they don't stop. And every, sycophant within the so-called MAGA content creator bubble, they all say the same damn thing every time. People can get enraged about it, but why get enraged? Because clearly what Medea and her people are doing is working. But hey, this is a sad commentary. He has no excitement. He has no energy. But the idea that you're going to go after Medea, at least Medea gives a damn about this country. You, Ben Shapiro knockoff, only give a damn about your wallet and Israel. You are as anti-American as it gets. They all are.
Historical madman Ayatollah Ali Khamenei's death and the remarkable ass-kicking that Trump had just begun delivering to a regime that's attacked and killed Americans ever since 1979, Kelly joined Greene in lamentation.
Okay. I think we get the point. I think we understand why Josh Hammer, like so many others within Turning Point and all these other organizations, are a joke. You are going to be up there talking about Trump kicking ass against Iran. Iran is kicking our ass. Iran is kicking our ass so badly that Trump had to lift the sanctions off of Iran's oil. That doesn't sound like somebody who's kicking ass. It sounds like somebody who's getting his ass kicked and being cucked at the same time. But hey, if it pays, that's how it works.